The alien girl was already dying when the human gave her water, and everyone watching knew it should have been a waste. The arena of Kati Station was silent except for the hiss of heat vents and the low hum of the crowd barrier. Thousands of alien eyes watched from behind energy glass as a single human stood on the scorched metal floor, a small canteen hanging from his belt. In front of him, chained to a gravity post, was an alien female barely conscious, her body trembling under lights meant to simulate a desert sun. The announcer had said this was a lesson. A lesson in obedience. A lesson in scarcity. No one expected the human to change the outcome. The human's name was Elias Rook. He was not a soldier, not a hero, not even a free man. He was a contracted laborer from Earth, sold into interstellar service after his colony ship had been seized for unpaid transit debts. To the Katis combined, humans were cheap muscle. Strong. Replaceable. Useful until broken. Elias wiped sweat from his brow as the artificial heat beat down on him. The air tasted metallic, dry enough to burn the throat. His lips were cracked, his tongue heavy in his mouth. He had been given one canteen for the entire work cycle. One. It was supposed to last him until the end of the shift. The alien girl groaned. Her species was called the Aerolin. Tall, slender, with pale blue skin that shimmered faintly under light. Her eyes were large and dark, rimmed with silver veins that pulsed weakly. Chains of black alloy wrapped around her wrists, ankles, and neck, locking her upright. She had been there for hours. Maybe longer. Water, she whispered. The word barely carried, but Elias heard it. Around the arena, several overseers watched with interest. This was not a coincidence. They had paired Elias with her on purpose. A test. The Combine loved tests. Elias reached for his canteen, then stopped. He knew the rules. If he gave her water, he would not have enough for himself. The heat would finish him before the cycle ended. Heat stroke. Organ failure. Quiet death. No compensation. The overseers leaned forward. Humans were predictable, they thought. Survival first. Always. Elias looked at the girl again. Her head lolled to the side. Her breathing was shallow. Her fingers twitched uselessly against the chains. She was not acting. She was not bargaining. She was dying. He remembered Earth. He remembered dust storms over red farmland, children sharing the last cup of water during ration weeks, his mother pouring half a share into his bowl and smiling like it was nothing. He remembered learning early that survival was not always about keeping everything for yourself. Slowly, deliberately, Elias unscrewed the canteen. A murmur rippled through the arena. The overseer nearest the glass clicked his mandibles in amusement. He won't, he said. They never do. Elias stepped closer to the gravity post. The heat lamps made his vision swim, but he forced himself to focus. He tilted the canteen to the alien girl's lips. At first, nothing happened. Then her mouth opened weakly, and the water touched her tongue. Her reaction was instant. She drank like someone pulled back from the edge of a cliff. Not greedily, not wildly, but with desperate precision, swallowing every drop as if her body knew this might be the last chance. Her throat worked again and again. Color slowly returned to her skin, faint but real. When the canteen emptied, Elias pulled it away. The arena was completely silent now. The girl's eyes fluttered open. They focused on him with sudden clarity. Confusion. Then understanding. You, she rasped. Why? Elias shrugged, his voice hoarse. Because you asked. That answer confused them more than anything else. The overseers exchanged glances. This was not part of the script. The lesson was supposed to be cruelty rewarded, weakness punished. But the human had broken the pattern. Sensors embedded in the arena floor began to spike. Vital readings from the Aerolin female were stabilizing. Against all projections, she was not dying anymore. One of the overseers growled. End the trial. Before the command could be completed, the girl spoke again, louder this time. My name is Caliph. The sound of a name carried power among the Aerolin. Elias felt it, even if he did not understand it. She lifted her head fully now, her gaze sharp, focused, alive. "They left me here," she said, her voice gaining strength, "because I refused to design weapons for them." Elias stiffened. The Combine's weapons were feared across 3 sectors. Precision bombardment. Planetary suppression grids. If she had worked on them. "I design water systems," Kalith continued. "Atmospheric harvesters. Emergency purification. I told them their war would kill entire biospheres. They chained me here to make an example." The overseers shouted orders. Shock prods crackled to life. Elias stepped between Kalith and the guards without thinking. The crowd stirred. This was new. Humans did not challenge authority. Humans endured. "You're making a mistake," one overseer hissed. "Step aside." Elias did not move. He could feel the heat pressing in, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. His vision blurred at the edges. He was already paying the price for the water he gave away. But something inside him felt steady. Calm. "She's an engineer," Elias said. "You're killing her for telling the truth." The overseer laughed. "Truth is irrelevant. Obedience is survival." Elias shook his head slowly. "That's where you're wrong." Kalith looked at him sharply. Humans were not supposed to talk back. Humans were not supposed to think beyond themselves. Yet here he was, standing unarmed in front of shock prods and plasma rifles, refusing to move. What the Combine did not know, what they had never bothered to learn, was that humans had survived worse than this. They had survived dying worlds, broken systems, and leaders who told them obedience was the only option. They had learned to adapt, to endure, to choose others even when it hurt. The alarms began to rise in pitch. Medical drones descended, scanning Kalith with sudden urgency. Her vitals were not only stable, they were improving faster than expected. The water Elias gave her had triggered something. Aerolin physiology responded aggressively to recovery stimuli. The overseers hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crept into their calculations. Kalith leaned close to Elias, her voice low but steady. "You have no water left," she said. "You will collapse soon." "Maybe," Elias replied. "But you won't." Her eyes searched his face, as if memorizing it. "You should not have done this," she said softly. Elias managed a tired smile. "Yeah. I get that a lot." As guards moved in and the heat continued to rise, no one noticed the data spike traveling through the station's network. No one noticed Kalith subtly adjusting her posture, aligning her body with the gravity post's resonance field. And no one yet understood that the human's simple act of mercy had just activated something far more dangerous than rebellion. It had activated hope. Kalith's chains were not just restraints. They were a circuit. Elias didn't realize it when he stepped in front of her, but the black alloy links had tiny, repeating grooves, micro-etched pathways that caught the light for a fraction of a second. The Combine called them obedience coils. They shocked, suppressed, and monitored. But Kalith had been an engineer before she became a prisoner. Engineers didn't see chains. They saw systems. A guard lunged forward with a shock prod, aiming for Elias's ribs. Elias raised an arm on instinct, bracing for pain. The prod never touched him. Kalith shifted her shoulders by a hair's breadth, and the gravity post behind her gave a faint, strange hum. The air rippled. The guard froze mid-step, his muscles locking, his eyes widening in confusion as the prod's charge vanished into nothing. Then his own suit lights flickered and died. He collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. The arena erupted in panicked noise. Overseers barked commands. Drones swarmed overhead. The crowd behind the barrier glass leaned forward, no longer entertained, now hungry for answers. Elias turned, stunned. "What did you?" "I borrowed the field," Kalith said, voice tight with effort. "The post has a stabilization core. They use it to keep prisoners upright. They never thought a prisoner might use it back." Another guard fired a stun bolt. Kalith twisted her wrist inside the chain cuff. The bolt bent in midair like it hit an invisible wall and slammed into the floor, sparking harmlessly. Elias stared. You can do this, while chained. Not for long, she said. Sweat beaded along her temples. My body is still weak. But you gave me enough to think. That sentence hit Elias harder than any weapon. You gave me enough to think. The Combine's cruelty had always been built on one assumption. Starve someone long enough, and they become predictable. Desperate. Small. But humans were dangerous in a different way. Humans gave each other just enough to stay human. A new alarm blared, deeper, heavier. The kind that meant security protocols were escalating. Kalitha's eyes widened. They're sealing the bay. Elias looked around, mind racing. The arena was a pit inside a larger maintenance ring. A narrow corridor led out behind the gravity posts, guarded by 2 drones and a sealed blast door. Beyond that would be station levels, cameras, checkpoints, airlocks. No way out. Unless you made one. Elias's throat burned. His hands trembled. The heat and dehydration were catching him now, fast. He could feel his heart pounding too hard, his vision dipping in and out like flickering light. Kalith noticed immediately. Her gaze sharpened. You're fading. I'll manage, Elias lied. You won't. She swallowed, then made a decision. Listen. I can open that blast door if I can touch the post-service port. But I need leverage. I need a conductor. Elias blinked. A conductor. Kalith lifted her chained wrist slightly. Your canteen. Elias stared at the empty metal container at his belt like it was suddenly a key to the universe. It's steel, she said. If you wedge it into the port, I can route the field spike through it. The door will think it's receiving a maintenance override. Elias didn't fully understand, but he understood enough. Humans didn't always win because they were stronger. They won because they used what they had. Elias yanked the canteen off his belt and ran toward the corridor. The drone swiveled toward him instantly, red lenses brightening. One fired. The stun bolt hit Elias in the shoulder. Pain exploded down his arm. His legs buckled, but he kept moving, stumbling, dragging himself forward, teeth clenched so hard his jaw ached. He reached the blast door's side panel and jammed the canteen into the thin seam of the service port, twisting until it locked. Behind him, Kalith pulled hard against her chains, inching the gravity post's field resonance wider and wider. Elias could hear the hum building, like a storm gathering inside metal. Now! He shouted. Kalith slammed her palm against the chain collar at her neck and forced the field to surge. The canteen vibrated violently in the port. The blast door shuddered. Then the locking lights on the panel flickered from red to amber. With a heavy, grinding roar, the door began to open. The arena exploded into chaos. Guards screamed. Drones surged forward. Overseers shouted orders that tangled into each other. Somewhere, a siren changed tone again, this time a station-wide warning. Elias turned back toward Kalith. Move. She tried. She couldn't. Her ankles were still locked. The chains anchored her to the post like roots. Elias ran to her, grabbed the chain links, and pulled. The alloy didn't budge. Kalitha's lips tightened. The anchor is inside the post. The lock is biometric. Elias's mind flashed through options. None were good. Then he saw the lock plate, small, sleek, and faintly glowing near the base of the gravity post. Not a keypad. Not a keyhole. A sensor pad shaped for Erelin hands. He looked at Kalitha's fingers, long, delicate, trembling. You can open it, he said. Kalith tried to take a step, but her knees buckled. I can't reach, she whispered. Elias didn't hesitate. He dropped to the ground, slid across the hot metal floor until he reached the lock plate, then reached up and grabbed Kalitha's wrist gently, guiding her hand down toward the sensor. Her skin was cool compared to the heat around them. Even weakened, she felt like water itself, rare, precious. Kalitha's palm touched the plate. The lock beeped. The chains clicked. Then they fell away. Kalith collapsed forward, and Elias caught her before she hit the floor. She was lighter than he expected, all bone and strength held together by stubborn will. The two of them staggered toward the open corridor. A drone dropped from the ceiling ahead, blocking their path, weapon arms unfolding like insect legs. Elias stopped. Kalith lifted her head, eyes narrowing. "I can disrupt it," she said, voice strained. "But it will trigger the station grid." "What happens if it triggers?" Elias asked. Kalith's expression darkened. "They will vent this section. Everyone in it. Prisoners, workers, all of them. They will call it containment." Elias's stomach tightened. He had seen combined containment. It was not safety. It was cleanup. He looked back at the arena. Behind the barrier glass, human workers were pressed together, faces pale, eyes wide. Some were chained. Some wore shock collars. All of them were watching Elias like he was a story they didn't dare believe. And then Elias saw something else. A small human child, maybe 12, standing behind the glass, clutching the sleeve of an older woman. The child's lips moved silently, as if praying. Elias's chest squeezed. If the station vented, that child would die. Elias looked at Kalith. "There's got to be another way." Kalith's voice was low. "Not one that saves everyone." Elias stared at the drone again. Then he noticed the maintenance hatch above it, an exposed wiring panel. The Combine had installed drones like predators, but they still ran their power lines like lazy builders. Fast. Efficient. Careless. Humans loved careless systems. Elias's mind worked through the shapes, the angles, the possibilities. He set Kalith down gently behind him. "Give me the chain." Kalith blinked. "What?" "The chain links," Elias said. "Your collar, anything metal." Kalith hesitated, then grabbed the fallen collar ring and tossed it to him. Elias swung it in his hand, testing the weight. A solid loop of alloy, heavy enough to hurt. The drone's weapon arm aimed at his chest. Elias ran forward anyway. He threw the collar ring not at the drone's body, but at the wiring panel above it. The ring struck the open panel and jammed itself into the exposed cables. Sparks erupted like fireworks. The drone's red eyes blinked once, then twice, then went dark. Its weapon arm drooped uselessly. The corridor ahead was clear. Kalith stared at Elias, breathless. You shorted it." Elias wiped sweat from his face, hands shaking. "I didn't want them venting the bay." Kalith's gaze softened for a moment, something unguarded showing through. Respect. Shock. Maybe even something like wonder. Behind the glass, the human workers began to pound softly, quietly at first, then louder. Not screaming. Not panicking. A rhythm. A signal. Kalith tensed. "They are noticing you." Elias didn't look away from the corridor. Good. Because if people noticed, they remembered. And if they remembered, the Combine's control started to crack. They moved into the corridor, the blast door grinding wider behind them. The air was cooler here, but it smelled like ozone and burning circuitry. Kalith leaned close, voice urgent. "Elias, if we go deeper into the station, they will hunt us. They will scan every deck." Elias nodded. "Then we don't hide. We move fast." Kalith's eyes flicked to the maintenance map glowing faintly on a wall panel. "There's a water reclamation hub 3 levels down. It connects to the station's emergency systems." Elias's tired eyes sharpened. "Water hub." Kalith nodded. "If I can access it, I can reroute the station's reserves. I can give water to the worker decks." Elias stared at her. "You can do that?" "Yes," she said. "But it will expose the Combine. The overseers hoard water to control behavior. If every deck suddenly has access, the fear breaks." Elias's heartbeat thudded. This wasn't just an escape anymore. This was a strike. A strike at the Combine's favorite weapon, thirst. Elias steadied himself, fighting dizziness. "Then we do it." Kalith's voice dropped, almost reverent. "If we do this, we become targets across the sector." Elias gave a rough, tired smile. "We already are." They began moving down the corridor, toward the deeper levels of Carty's station, where pipes carried water like veins and the Combine guarded every drop like gold. And behind them, in the arena, humans pressed their hands to the glass and watched the impossible happen. A human had given away his last water. And instead of dying quietly, he had started a war. By the time they reached the lower decks, Elias could barely feel his fingers. The heat had faded, replaced by a cold that crawled under the skin. His mouth was dry again, his head light, every step heavier than the last. He forced himself to keep moving, counting breaths, focusing on Kalitha's footsteps ahead of him. As long as she was upright, as long as she was moving with purpose, he could keep going. The corridor opened into a vast cylindrical chamber. Pipes as thick as buildings ran along the walls, pulsing faintly with blue light. The sound of flowing water echoed everywhere, a deep, constant roar like an ocean trapped in metal. This was the reclamation hub, the heart of the station's water system. Kalith stopped dead. For a moment, Elias thought something was wrong. Then he realized she was staring. "They told us the reserves were failing," she said quietly. "They said there wasn't enough." Elias followed her gaze. Transparent conduits revealed water rushing through them in massive volumes, endlessly recycled, endlessly controlled. "That's a lot of not enough," Elias muttered. Kalitha's jaw tightened. "They keep worker decks thirsty on purpose. Mild dehydration lowers resistance. Makes people obedient. Makes rebellion feel impossible." Elias leaned against a railing, chest heaving. "Yeah. Humans figured that trick out centuries ago." Before Kalith could respond, the lights dimmed. A voice rolled through the chamber, amplified and calm. "Impressive," it said. "You have reached places you were never meant to see." Elias turned slowly. A figure stepped out from a raised platform across the chamber. Tall. Armored. Its silhouette sharp and deliberate. The insignia on its chest marked it as a high overseer. Not a bureaucrat. A strategist. Kalith stiffened. Overseer Varnek. Varnek's many-lensed eyes focused on her. "Engineer Kalith. You survived longer than expected." His gaze shifted to Elias. "And you brought a human. How poetic." Security drones emerged from hidden alcoves, sealing exits with a quiet finality. Energy fields shimmered to life, cutting off escape. Elias's vision swam, but he straightened anyway. "Let us guess," he said hoarsely. "You're here to explain why this is all necessary." Varnek's mandibles clicked in something like amusement. "Explanation is unnecessary. Control is sufficient." Kalith stepped forward, voice steady despite everything. "You are hoarding water while entire decks suffer." "Yes," Varnek said simply. "Scarcity is the most efficient form of governance." Elias laughed, a dry, cracked sound. "That's where you messed up." Varnek tilted his head. "Explain." "You assumed everyone reacts to scarcity the same way," Elias said. "You assumed fear always wins." He took a step forward. His legs nearly gave out, but he kept going. "Humans don't just survive scarcity. We share through it. We organize. We remember who took and who helped." Varnek's eyes flicked briefly to Kalith. "And you believe this one act of kindness changes anything?" Kalith raised her chin. "It already has." She moved. Her fingers danced across a nearby console faster than Elias could follow. Symbols flashed. Systems responded. The hub hummed louder, deeper, like something waking up. Varnek barked an order. Drones surged forward. Elias didn't think. He grabbed a loose length of pipe from the railing and swung it hard into the nearest drone. The impact sent a shock through his arms, but the drone reeled, sparking. Another fired. Elias felt the bolt hit his side. White pain tore through him. He collapsed to one knee, gasping. Kalith shouted his name. "I'm fine," he lied again. Varnek watched calmly as chaos spread. "You see," he said. "Humans exhaust quickly. They break." Kalith slammed her palm down on the console. The chamber lights flared. Across the station, valves opened. Water surged. Not just here, everywhere. Worker decks. Prisoner levels. Maintenance corridors. Emergency taps unlocked. Storage seals disengaged. For the first time since Kati Station was built, water flowed freely without permission. The station shuddered. Alarms screamed, not containment alarms, but distribution alarms. Systems designed to never activate simultaneously were suddenly overwhelmed. Varnek's calm finally cracked. "Stop this." Kalith turned to him, eyes blazing. "You taught me your systems. You taught me how you think. You never taught me to obey." She hit the final command. The station's internal network lit up with open access feeds. Images flooded every display: reservoir levels, hoarded reserves, worker dehydration statistics, mortality projections. Truth, raw and undeniable. Elias pushed himself to his feet, every movement agony. He looked around and realized something had changed. The drones hesitated. Not because they were damaged. Because the workers controlling them were watching. Across the station, humans and other species stood frozen in front of screens, seeing what had been hidden from them. Seeing how artificial their suffering had been. Varnek backed away a step. "You think information equals power?" Kalith stepped beside Elias. "No," she said. "Trust does." The first drone shut down. Then another. Not all of them, but enough. Varnek snarled. "You have doomed yourselves." Elias met his gaze, voice quiet but unshakable. "Maybe. But we doomed your system first." The High Overseer turned and fled, disappearing behind a sealed platform door as emergency protocol scrambled. Kalith sagged slightly, the adrenaline draining from her. Elias caught her, holding her upright this time. "You did it," he said, barely audible. She shook her head. "We did." The chamber echoed with footsteps as workers began pouring in. Humans, Aerolin, others Elias didn't recognize. They stared at the open water conduits, at the flowing life they had been denied. Some cried. Some laughed. Some simply drank. Elias sank to the floor, finally unable to stand. His vision blurred badly now. Kalith knelt beside him, panic flashing across her face. "You need water." "I know," Elias whispered. She looked around desperately, then cupped her hands under a low-pressure outlet and brought them to his lips. The water was cool. Real. Elias drank, slowly, carefully. As strength crept back into his limbs, he realized something profound. This wasn't just escape. This was ignition. Kalith met his eyes. "The Combine will retaliate." Elias nodded. "Yeah. They will hunt us." "Good." Kalith studied him. "You're not afraid." Elias smiled faintly. "I'm human." Above them, the station trembled, not with collapse, but with movement. With people choosing to move, to act, to refuse silence. The Combine had ruled through thirst. And now, across Kati Station, people were learning what abundance felt like. And they would never forget. The first shot of the retaliation did not come from the sky. It came from silence. Kati Station did not explode. It did not lock down. It did not vent the decks. Instead, systems began shutting off one by one, not randomly, but surgically. Lights dimmed in patterns. Elevators stalled between levels. Communication panels flickered, then went dark. The Combine was cutting the station loose. Elias felt it before anyone said it out loud. The hum beneath the floor changed pitch, deepening like a slow, dangerous breath. "They're isolating us," he said quietly. Kalith nodded, already moving. "They're preparing to write this station off as lost due to internal instability." "That means," Elias started. "No rescue," she finished. "No negotiation. They'll let everyone inside die and rebuild somewhere else." Around them, workers froze as the realization spread. Some shouted. Some panicked. Some simply stared at the flowing water as if it might disappear if they blinked. Elias pushed himself to his feet, legs shaking but functional now. He looked at the crowd, humans and aliens alike, frightened but awake. "Listen," he shouted, voice echoing through the chamber. The noise dipped slightly. "They're trying to scare us back into obedience," Elias said. "That's their last move." A murmur rolled through the group. Kalith stepped beside him, her presence steady, commanding. "This station was built to survive supply failures," she said. "If we control the systems, we can keep it alive." A voice shouted back, "And when they send ships?" Kalith didn't hesitate. "Then we make it costly." The word hung in the air. Humans exchanged glances. So did others. Cost was something the Combine understood. Elias turned to a group of maintenance workers nearby. "Who knows power routing?" A human woman raised her hand. "I do. Reactor subgrids." "Good," Elias said. "You're with Kalith." He pointed to another cluster. "Who knows comms?" A tall alien male stepped forward. "I repaired signal relays on Deck 9. "Your lead," Elias said. He didn't ask permission. He didn't assign ranks. He just pointed and trusted. And something incredible happened. People listened. They moved. The station did not become organized chaos. It became organized intent. Kalith worked at the center console, hands flying as she rerouted systems the Combine never expected workers to touch. Elias stayed close, leaning when he needed to, forcing his body to keep up. "They'll send suppression craft," Kalith said under her breath. "Automated first. Then troops." Elias nodded. "Then we don't wait." He turned to the crowd again. "This station has gravity, power, water, and people who know how it works. That's more than enough." A human voice called out, "Enough for what?" Elias met their eyes. "Enough to say no." Minutes passed like seconds. Or seconds like minutes. Time warped as alarms rose and fell, as systems came back online under new control. Then the first impact hit. The station shuddered violently. Some screamed. Tools clattered. A shockwave rolled through the hub. Kalith looked up sharply. "Automated craft. They're testing our shields." "Can we hold?" Elias asked. "For now," she said. "But they're probing." Elias felt the old fear trying to creep in. The kind that whispered you are small, you are trapped, you cannot win. He crushed it. "Open external comms," he said. Kalith hesitated. "They'll trace." "I know," Elias said. "Do it anyway." The main display flickered to life, showing the void outside the station. 3 Combine craft hovered nearby, sleek and predatory. A cold voice came through the speakers. "This is the Cartes Combine. Surrender control immediately. Resistance will result in total loss." Elias stepped forward, standing straight despite the ache in his bones. "This is Elias Rook," he said. "You already tried total loss." There was a pause. Elias continued. "You control through fear and thirst. We control through cooperation. That's why you're nervous." The voice hardened. "You are a labor asset. You do not negotiate." Elias smiled faintly. "Then stop listening." He cut the channel. Kalith stared at him. "You just made them angry," Elias said. "Good." The second wave hit harder. Shields flared. The station groaned. Power dipped across several decks. Elias grabbed a railing, steadying himself. "How long?" Kalith checked the readouts. "Minutes. Maybe less." Elias looked at the water conduits again, an idea forming, not heroic, not dramatic, but human. "Can you vent pressure through the external lines?" he asked. Kalith frowned. "Yes, but that would turn water into thrust," Elias finished. "Not a weapon. A shove." Her eyes widened. "That could alter our trajectory," she said slowly. "Enough to force them to reposition." "Do it," Elias said. "Humans have been using water to move things since we learned to float. Caliph rerouted the system. Outside, massive plumes of vapor burst from the station's external vents. The sudden force nudged Kati station sideways, just enough. One of the combined craft misjudged the shift. It clipped the station's shield and spun out of formation, thrusters flaring wildly. Inside the hub, a stunned silence fell. Then cheering. Not loud. Not reckless. But real. Caliph exhaled, almost laughing. That shouldn't have worked. Elias shrugged. It did. The combine regrouped quickly. They always did. But something had changed. They were reacting now. Not controlling. Elias leaned heavily against the console, exhaustion finally catching him again. Caliph steadied him. You don't have much left, she said quietly. Elias nodded. I know. She studied him. Then why are you still standing? Elias looked out at the workers, people drinking, fixing, choosing. Because if I sit down now, he said, this becomes just another story about a system that crushed people. Caliph swallowed. And if you don't? Then it becomes a story about the day humans reminded the galaxy what sharing actually does. The station shook again, but held. Somewhere beyond the hull, the combine was recalculating. And for the first time in a very long time, their numbers were wrong. The combine did not retreat. They never did. Instead, the void around Kati station filled with light as more ships dropped out of jump space, larger, heavier, built not for control but for erasure. Their hulls were marked with suppression sigils reserved for one purpose only. Example making. Caliph saw the fleet telemetry and went very still. They're escalating, she said. If they fire together, the shields won't hold. Elias felt the weight of that settle into his bones. Around them, the station hummed with effort, power rerouted, systems strained, people working past fear because stopping now meant going back to chains. How long? Elias asked. Caliph swallowed. Minutes. Elias closed his eyes briefly and breathed. He thought of Earth again. Of people standing in floodwaters, passing sandbags hand to hand. Of power outages lit by shared candles. Of how humans always looked weakest right before they surprised everyone. Open all decks, Elias said. Caliph turned to him sharply. What? Every internal channel, he said. Audio and visual. She hesitated for only a heartbeat, then obeyed. The station's displays flickered. Corridors, habitation blocks, maintenance bays, faces filled the screens. Humans. Aerolin. Others. Fear, hope, exhaustion, anger. All of it watching. Elias stepped into frame. I won't pretend this ends cleanly, he said, voice rough but steady. The combine is coming to teach us a lesson. Murmurs rippled through the decks. But here's the thing, Elias continued. They already taught us theirs. Scarcity. Fear. Obedience. He paused, letting the silence work. And today, we taught them ours. He gestured behind him, to the flowing water, the working systems, the people standing together. We didn't take power. We shared it. We didn't hoard life. We gave it. Caliph watched him, eyes shining. The combine believes control is strength, Elias said. Humans learned a long time ago that cooperation scales faster than cruelty. A human voice shouted from one of the feeds. What do we do? Elias met the camera. You do what you're already doing. You help the person next to you. You don't panic. You don't run. He took a breath. And if this station falls, it won't fall quietly. The feeds cut. Outside, the combined fleet began charging weapons. Energy signatures spiked across every spectrum. Caliph grabbed Elias's arm. There's one option left, she said. The core. Elias looked at her. The reactor. She nodded. Not to overload it. To broadcast it. Elias frowned. Broadcast. The combine keeps its workers isolated, Caliph said quickly. Stations. Fleets. Sectors. But the reactor core has a subspace stabilizer. If I reroute it, we can push a signal far beyond this system. Elias's eyes widened. A message. Proof, Calith corrected. Water levels. Hoarding protocols. Mortality data. Everything. Elias understood instantly. You expose them. To everyone, she said. Not just their enemies. Their workers. Their allies. And they'll destroy us for it, Elias said. Calith met his gaze. Yes. Elias didn't hesitate. Do it. The station shook violently as the first barrage hit. Shields flared, bled energy, held, barely. Calith's hands moved faster than ever, rerouting power, overriding failsafes that screamed in protest. Elias felt the floor tremble under his boots. He braced himself against the console, vision blurring again. He was running on borrowed strength now, adrenaline and stubbornness holding him upright. Signal charging, Calith said. 30 seconds. Another impact slammed into the station. Somewhere, metal tore. Alarms wailed. 20 seconds. Elias keyed the internal channel again, just audio this time. This is Elias, he said. Whatever happens next, remember this moment. He cut the channel. Outside, the combined fleet aligned for a killing strike. Inside, the reactor core surged. Calith slammed the final command. The signal exploded outward, not as a weapon, not as a threat, but as truth. Data poured into subspace, riding frequencies the Combine had never bothered to secure because they never imagined rebellion would come from inside. Across sectors, screens flickered. Workers saw numbers that explained their thirst. Engineers saw schematics designed for control, not efficiency. Allies saw casualty projections hidden behind polished reports. The Combine's lie unraveled at the speed of light. For a single, suspended moment, everything went quiet. Then the Combine fleet faltered. Not all of it, but enough. Orders contradicted each other. Targeting hesitated. 2 ships broke formation as internal revolts flared aboard them, crews suddenly realizing what they had been enforcing. Calith slumped against the console, breath shaking. Signal complete. Elias smiled faintly. Worth it. The station took one final hit. Shields failed. The lights went out. Then emergency power kicked in. Dim, but alive. Elias felt his knees give way. He sank to the floor, vision tunneling. Calith dropped beside him, catching his shoulders. Elias. Stay with me. He laughed weakly. Told you, humans are stubborn. She pressed her forehead to his. You changed everything. Elias shook his head slightly. We did. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. When the lights came back fully, the combined fleet was gone. Not destroyed. Dispersed. Retreating to deal with something far worse than a rebellious station. Truth. Rescue ships arrived hours later, independent, cautious, answering a call they could not ignore. They found Kati Station battered but standing, its people organized, hydrated, unbroken. They found Elias Rook alive. Barely. As medics worked, Calith stood nearby, watching him breathe. When his eyes finally opened, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You're still here, he murmured. So are you, she replied. He smiled. Guess that means, they didn't win. Calith looked out through the viewport, where the stars seemed a little closer than before. No, she said. They won't anymore. The story of Kati Station spread. About a human who gave away his last water. About an alien engineer who refused to obey. About a system that cracked not from violence, but from sharing. Across the galaxy, workers whispered it to each other like a promise. Humans didn't conquer the stars by force. They survived them together. And once you learn that, no chain ever truly held again.